How will Splitgate 2 stand out in comparison to the current and new FPS titles coming out?
To me, this was more of a let's take what people love and let's bring it to the next level.
A lot of recent titles in the shooter genre have had a lack of inspired gameplay.
We have goals. We want to be a top shooter in the world. We want to make something people love.
You guys want to compete with industry giants like Fortnite, Apex, and Call of Duty.
And I'll just say, I think gamers are ready for something new. They want a new shooter.
Well, there's been a lot of discussion about Splitgate 2, and the gaming community has asked a lot of questions across YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Reddit. Today we have the pleasure of having a conversation with the CEO of 1047 Games, Ian Proulx. Ian, thank you for being here today with us. It's finally time to get a little bit more of a discussion going about the next game.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really pumped to do this and excited to be chatting.
So going into some more general questions about the game, what are you most excited about or looking forward to most for Splitgate 2?
I think the biggest thing for me is just the live ops. I think that's the biggest thing compared to Splitgate 1, where we had a great game. It was super fun, but it took us 7 months to ship our first season, and that new season had one map. Like, I really just want to have, here is a live version with amazing live ops, the same great gunplay and movement and portals that you've always enjoyed, but now there's constant new content coming out all the time, more meaningful variety, variety with a purpose, better progression, better live ops, so that, like I said, there's always something fresh, new content coming. We wanted to raise the bar, right? Make it a AAA game, right? Art, animation, VFX, audio, all of these things getting to a AAA bar. It's a AAA version of Splitgate. And I'm forgetting a couple others, but you get the idea. Those are kind of a number of the big goals we had when we set out to improve this game.
In the IGN article, you had mentioned that you guys want to compete with industry giants like Fortnite, Apex, and Call of Duty. Splitgate's portal system was revolutionary, but how will Splitgate 2 stand out in comparison to the current and new FPS titles coming out?
Yeah. Well, I'd say still, like, to me, the portals are the unique selling point, right? That is still by far the number one. That's the innovation here. I'll say we have more coming on how we utilize those portals. I'll say though, to me, this was more of a let's take what people love and let's bring it to the next level versus like let's change fundamentally what makes this game special. So the secret sauce is still gunplay, portals, movement. That will always be the DNA, the secret sauce, the thing that makes our, separates us from the rest of the pack. And then it's about refining it. It's about having amazing live ops. It's about adding to the formula. Building on top of that, we've added the factions, right? To us, we like to say it's all 90% still all about guns and portals and movement, right? If I'm in a gunfight, 90% of what determines who's going to win that gunfight should still be who has the better aim, who has the better mechanics, who has the better portaling. But that extra layer of 10% is where the abilities and the equipments come in, right? It's where the team composition comes in of like, hey, let's go Sabrask, let's go Meridian, let's go Arrows, right? Let's mix it up this round, try something new. But I'd say, like I said, the key differentiating point here still to this day will always be portals, gunplay, movement, in that order.
A lot of recent titles in the shooter genre have had a lack of inspired gameplay and have struggled to carve out their place in a market crowded with historic titles and live service behemoths, like we were talking about, games like Valorant, Fortnite. How do you plan on overcoming those obstacles with Splitgate 2?
I think there is absolutely a need for this kind of game in the market, right? There's really Splitgate and there's Halo, and there's not a lot of arena/arcade shooters out there, whatever you want to call it, games that are respawn 4v4, right? There's really not a whole lot out there. And so I think there's a gap, and I think we fill that gap. I think we have a great game that fills that gap, that has the unique selling point of the portals. And I think we will execute on the other parts that you need, which is, like I said, great live ops, great onboarding. We have that. We have more to come for sure, I will say. So we're not putting all our eggs in one basket in terms of all we're going to do. And even with 4v4, we've really only shown I don't know, 10%, not even, right? Like
Wow.
we've shown 1.5 game modes and a fraction of the maps and guns. So we have a ton more to show. But it's definitely, there's more to come, is what I'll say. That's not just your 4v4 experience.
What's your philosophy and approach on community feedback as it pertains to making adjustments or changes to the game? And how do you balance input from a competitive player's perspective, which is usually the minority, but has the most understanding of mechanics or different things in the game to its limit, and then the experience of casual players, which is going to be the majority, but they might not necessarily have that understanding like a competitive player might have?
My approach, it's really tricky, right? Because you do have to balance. You have the loud people on Twitter and Reddit, and those people matter a ton, right? And then you have this super quiet people who just casually play and never really post anything and aren't even following you. And then you also have data, right? We're looking at the data of like, okay, which maps are performing the best, which guns are performing the best. So I think when it comes to balancing, that's where like data is sort of king. We'll look at like, okay, the win rate and the KD ratio for a given gun or a given class is way better for this one than this one. That sort of speaks for itself. And we'll break it down. We'll look at like, all right, well, how does that change at a high skill level versus a low skill level? So it's not as simple as just trying to make everything 50-50, right? But that's where it's very data driven. I'd say when it comes to more subjective things, that's where feedback becomes super important. There's no right answer. Like you have to ultimately look at all of these things. And then you do get those tricky decisions where the pros want one thing, the casuals want another, the data says something else. And that gets really tricky and you just kind of navigate it the best you can. But I like to think I have a pretty good sense just as a gamer myself. And so my fallback, if I'm like, man, I'm getting pulled in 50 directions, my fallback is like, well, my gut tells me this change is going to be the most fun. We're going to try it. And the good news is if that change ends up being bad, we're going to be very quick to apologize and change and iterate and keep going and keep seeking that balance. But it's really, there's no silver bullet answer to this.
So I had a lot of fun participating in the events like the last 250K Pro tournament and the community events they had, like the Boom TV events, the Twitch rivals, all those types of events. Are there any more plans for esports competitions or more community events or even a pro league like we had in the last game?
So TBD is the short answer. I mean, I've had a number of like esports or not orgs like team orgs, but like tournament, whatever you want to call it, orgs reach out, and we've had some early conversations. I'd say my feeling is I probably think of esports as a post-launch thing. Um, to me, like we just want to make a game that's fun, that's successful, that's here to stay, that people can play for years to come. And when I think of it in the life cycle of, hey, if this is a 10-year game, which I think it absolutely will be, esports doesn't have to be priority number one. Like it's something we can tackle post launch. Like let's make a fun game first. Let's get the balancing in a good spot. Let's make sure that it's working. And then esports will follow very naturally. Like obviously Splitgate 2 is it's got casual and competitive elements, but it's obviously got a very high skill ceiling. It's very viewable, it's very fun. There's tons of highlights. And so I absolutely think it has esports potential and one day absolutely should be an esports and likely will be. I'm having conversations because I'm not going to say no to a phone call, but it's not a top priority yet. I more just want to keep these relationships warm, and we'll see what happens. But in terms of more of the like casual side, the Twitch rivals style, Boom TV style. I love that stuff. Community tournaments. I mean, and also I get to play in those, right? So selfishly, I'm like, I want to do those because the ones where there's no money on the line, or if it's community run, like sign me up. But no, we're absolutely going to do things of that nature. No specifics set in stone, other than like, hey, you can count on us doing these kind of events because they're so fun. It's more engaging. You get participation from competitive and casual players and devs, which selfishly, again, I want to play. Um, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that.
So for the upcoming alpha, there you had mentioned there are going to be some changes coming from the last one. What are some of the highlights from what's changed from the first one to this one?
Yeah. So I'll say for the upcoming external playtest, there's a number of things. So I think some of them we tweeted about already. So like longer time to kill. Uh, Hot zone is no longer shared progression. It's also light. It's longer rounds. So each round is a little bit longer. Takes a little bit longer to capture the hill. It's no longer shared progression, meaning like you want to win the hill, you got to get every single second to win that hill. Um, there's also been some feedback based on the maps. So, we heard people want more portal walls. We have absolutely added more portal walls, but I think, more vertical, more portal jumps as well. And we've done that on future maps too. Um, and we also have a new map that we're going to be testing for the first time externally in this, actually, I guess second time, but that is larger scale. I think we led with 3 of the smallest maps in the game. So we have one of our larger maps that we're looking for feedback on. That's a little more vertical. Trying to think what else. I think that's the key things. A bunch of balance tweaks, of course.
So going back to the first game's growth, what were some of the toughest challenges the team faced during like, let's say, the console era blow up of the game? And what are some lessons that you're taking with you into the next game?
Yeah, so I'll kind of answer two big learning lessons, and I hinted at this earlier, which is order of priorities: fun, live ops, onboarding. Um, so spend a lot of time getting our short term retention, onboarding really, really strong to build on that foundation of a fun game. And obviously, you're always making it more fun. You're always improving it. How can we polish? How can we add new guns, new maps, new modes, etc. Um, but you have to have great onboarding. And then learning lesson 2 with Splitgate's kind of relaunch and console launch was just the importance of live ops, which we already knew was super important. And there's not a whole lot we could have done about it because when you're a team of 15 or so people, you just can't keep up. You could have the most fun game ever, but at some point, people will run out of things to do. They'll get bored of it if you don't push an update, if you don't have a content plan. I mean, you see this with every single game that basically ever comes out. Like it has to have new season, tons of new content. Every week there's something new. And so that was a huge learning lesson with Splitgate 1 that I think has really prepared us to have an amazing launch and just grow through our launch with Splitgate 2, because I don't want to go through that pain again. I think you see it with a lot of the recent shooters. I mean, there's not a ton of examples, but the finals, X Defiant, right? Kind of 2 of the recent free to play shooters that had a big launch and fun games, right? But started to bleed players. And I think with both of them, obviously, there's always more than one reason, but a big part of it was just not enough content, not enough new things to do. And anyway, so I'd say that was a huge learning lesson for us that I've just, it's been my obsession for the last couple of years to make sure that that doesn't happen again and that we have the best live ops experience of any game out there. And I'll just say, I think gamers are ready for something new. I mean, it gives me a lot of confidence. Like they want a new shooter. They want to try it at least, right? And then it's on us to make sure, hey, if we can deliver a great new shooter, which we will, and also the rest of the missing pieces that you need to sustain and grow, I think we're in a great spot to do that. But that's the hard challenge that most games haven't figured out yet because they haven't gone through that personal pain that I have, so that we have.
So 1047 Games and the original Splitgate has started as an idea with a couple friends in a dorm room to blowing up with 22 million downloads since 2019. What was the goal and vision back then, and how has that and your mentality evolved over the years to where you're at now?
I don't think the vision has changed that much. When we got started, I mean, maybe it's become a little more defined. I think when we started, I didn't really have a vision. It was literally just like, I love Halo, I love Portal, and I actually had this idea back in high school. So started on it in college, but had this idea in high school just playing Portal 2, thinking like, man, this would be such a cool mechanic to have in a shooter. And that was about it. But then built the prototype for my Stanford senior project. Um, very quickly found the fun, both in terms of the fun of playing the game, but also the fun of developing games. And so, there wasn't any sort of kind of grand vision. It was really just, I just want to make this game because it's super cool. It's never been done. Let's go do it. And honestly, that kind of remains the same today. I mean, I think it's a little bit more defined than that, where like, okay, we have goals. We want to be a top shooter in the world. We want to make something people love. But really, it's like we just like making a cool game that we enjoy, that the company enjoys, that the fans enjoy, um, and we're having a lot of fun doing it. And so, like that really is true to our core and hasn't really changed.
Gotcha. Yeah, I remember when we first started playing, that was one of the wow factors for us. We're like, what is this? This is like the future of gaming. There's portals involved with an FPS and it actually works. So from back then to now, playing the new game, the sentiment's the same. Any final thoughts that you'd like to leave with the community?
I guess the last thing I'll say, but just, you guys know us. Like we're very community first. It's a top priority for us. This is the reason Splitgate was successful, is because of you guys. Because you guys shared your thoughts and your feedback and you participated and you posted and you told us what you want more of and what you want less of. That's the mindset we're trying to bring with Splitgate 2. And it's also a big focus of ours, like recently internally, has been we got to get to be more community first. We got to start talking. That's part of the reason I'm talking to you right now. Like this is a top priority for us. It's why we're doing these external play tests. We don't want it to be a marketing beat. We truly want to get feedback from you guys. So yeah, that's what I'll leave you with. But we listen. We love the hearing all the thoughts, and we're going to keep listening and keep making changes accordingly.
Love that. I also wanted to mention this isn't common. You don't really get to talk to a CEO of a game and get to pick their brain and figure out what's going on with any of these games. A CEO, let alone a community guy. Okay, like there are very few games that are doing this. So from me, from the rest of the community, we really appreciate what you guys are doing, and we're very much so looking forward to the next game. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Really, thanks for having me. Like, love talking, and we'll do more of this. So
Sounds good, Ian. Thank you.
Well, I was watching Mikaveli for a little bit, which was pretty fun to watch.